Hello human beings, PowerGamer here. Unfortunately, the pollen war has finally struck me, but I don't have time to deal with that right now. I have more important things to worry about, like imagining what life would be like if Mario Kart Super Circuit never existed. Yeah, it's terrible. My desk would be half an inch to the left.
Mario Kart Super Circuit, one of my favorite instances of saying, oh right, this does exist. I don't think anyone would deny that this is the least impactful game in the entire Mario Kart series, since unless you had it as a kid, no one has had any desire to go back to it. The game was first announced at Nintendo Space World in 2000, and it was originally titled Mario Kart Advanced as it was being developed for their new handheld, the Game Boy Advance. Surprisingly, instead of Nintendo's main development team, it was developed by Intelligent Systems, the same team that helped out with Metroid and made Fire Emblem and Paper Mario, and it is the only game in the Mario Kart series to be that way. Although they did get assistance from Rareware, who provided Donkey Kong's model, since they just couldn't do it themselves, apparently. Now that's a boardroom meeting I'd like to see. Since the series was going from a console to a handheld, the game went back to the 2D Mode 7 graphics that were used in Super Mario Kart as opposed to the full 3D of Mario Kart 64. Mario Kart Super Circuit was released for the Game Boy Advance shortly after the system's launch on July 21st, 2001 in Japan, August 27th in North America, and September 14th in Europe. The game sold super well, becoming the fourth best-selling game on the GBA with 5.91 million copies sold, and the only games to beat it was every single Pokemon game for the system. Reception was weirdly high upon its release. This is actually the highest rated game in the entire Mario Kart series on Metacritic, and I assume that's solely because of how impressive it was for the console it was released on. Because nowadays, this game is only talked about when someone is going over the entire series. Not necessarily because it's a bad game, but because it didn't really do that much in the grand scheme of things.
As of now, this is the only Mario Kart game I have never played before, mainly because I had no desire to whatsoever, but if I'm gonna look over the rest of the series, I gotta get through this one at some point. Honestly, I have more experience with the portable Mario Kart games than the console ones, so it's time to finally see what the very first one was like.
We actually get kind of a cute opening that's nothing crazy, but it's still charming for a Game Boy Advance title. Starting up, we can pick our character, and the roster is exactly the same as it was in Mario Kart 64, only this time we can actually see the character's stats as opposed to just guessing. Thank God I don't need a notebook anymore. Picking a character, we can hop into a race, and yep, that looks about right. The graphics are pretty much a hybrid of the last two games. It's fully 2D like Super Mario Kart, but the sprites are much closer to something like Mario Kart 64. It's not as detailed as that, but it still looks pretty good for a handheld at the time. However, there is one thing about this game that I physically cannot comprehend. Can someone please explain to me why this game's soundtrack actually slaps? This game honestly has some of the best music in any Mario Kart game ever. I'm not joking. Sure, it's a bit limited, but for what they had access to, these songs sounded genuinely really good, and I am super impressed. Now, as for the actual game, the main mode is the Grand Prix, which is pretty unchanged. You pick a cup, race through the 4 tracks while using items to beat your opponents, you get points at the end of the race, and whoever has the most points at the end wins. Since we're on the Game Boy Advance, it's a bit simpler and clunkier than in Mario Kart 64. The controls are mostly unchanged. You accelerate with the A button, brake with B, drift with R, and use items with L. And this is the sole reason I'm playing this on an original Game Boy Advance instead of the SP, because I'm pretty sure I'd give myself a hernia if I tried to play it with these tiny little things. And since this is a 2D game, the controls are pretty awkward. It's not as bad as Super Mario Kart, but it's a step down from Mario Kart 64. The turning is kinda heavy, and unless you have a large amount of room, the drifting is really unreliable. A lot of the time, you're better off just taking it slower rather than drifting your way through the many turns. But the game is at least nice enough to give you this little icon whenever a turn shows up, which can be helpful on such a tiny screen.
Because we're back to 2D, this game definitely takes more influence from Super Mario Kart, but it does have some elements of Mario Kart 64 in it, thank Christ.
For starters, we don't have as many items as last time. All of the items that were in both games, like the shells, mushrooms, and star, are back. The only ones from 64 that don't return are the fake item box, the triple and gold mushrooms, and the super banana, though the triple shells are still here. Every item works the same as last time, except for the red shells, which can be fired backwards, and the lightning, which doesn't make you lose your items. And now let's take a look at the new items.
This is just a bunch of cube drawings.
Yeah, Mario Kart Super Circuit is the only game in the entire series to not introduce any new items. If an item is in this game, it was already in Mario Kart 64. It doesn't even bring back the feather from Super Mario Kart, which I'm okay with, but still. Clearly, they were more concerned about just making the thing work rather than moving the series forward, since we're going from console to handheld at a time where those things were really different in terms of power. And of course, it is impressive they were able to get a game like this to run on the Game Boy Advance, but sadly this means it still has some of the same issues as previous games. I already said the controls are pretty weird, but we still have ourselves themselves some cheating CPUs. They once again get some pretty nasty speed boosts, so if you make even one small mistake, it can cost you the entire race. And it's pretty easy to make a mistake because for whatever reason, they decided to make some of these tracks as windy and complicated as possible. There are so many big turns in these tracks, and they aren't as sharp as they were in Super Mario Kart, but they throw so many of them at you, it can be ridiculous. If you use a mushroom or hit a speed boost, there is at least a 60% chance you're going off course. The off-terrain really slows you down in this game, and of course it still retains the lakitu spin out from Mario Kart 64, which I now know works like the opening of the race where you have to let go of the acceleration button in order to not burn out. Really wish the game told me about that. The island balance isn't as crazy as Mario Kart 64. You can still get a star in 3rd place, but you can also get 1 shell in 8th, so it varies quite a bit. The only thing really amusing was when I got a blue shell from a boo while I was in 1st place, so I just let my opponent pass me so I could hit them. It doesn't help this game has some of the most rubber-banding AI I have ever seen in my life. The racers can go from amazing to brain dead in a single race. The only positive I can give is that this game gives you the option to instantly restart a race at any time, but doing that costs one of your 3 continues, which are limited like in Super Mario Kart. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention you had unlimited continues in Mario Kart 64. Whoops. But if you're worried about this game being too different from Super Mario Kart, don't worry, because it brings back everyone's favorite feature from that game, coins. Coins are once again scattered on the track, although you don't get them from item boxes anymore. I am grateful for that, but even with that addition, they go from lame to infuriating with their inclusion in this game. They increase your top speed, but they don't max out at 10 anymore. You can keep going and get as much as possible. What makes them so annoying is that you lose one every single time you bump into a racer, and if you lose them all, you spin out, which is just wonderful in a game where your opponents get speed boost. Plus, when you run low, you get this loud beeping, which makes it even more annoying.
While the general racing is similar to that of the previous games, the actual Grand Prix works a little bit differently.
We actually have 5 cups this time instead of 4, meaning we're back to 20 courses like in the original, though thankfully they vary more in theming. In addition to Mushroom, Flower, and Star, we start out with the Lightning Cup, and beating all 4 of them unlocks the Special Cup, but only for that engine class. If you unlock it in 50cc, you don't unlock it in 100 or 150cc. The Mushroom Cup has Peach Circuit, which is your standard starting level. It's just an open field with some peach trees. Shy Guy Beach is the obligatory beach level, and it's pretty inoffensive. Riverside Park is a jungle with a lot of jumps, so this one's fairly solid. And Bowser Castle 1, oh Christ, is just a standard Bowser Castle like from Super Mario Kart, and wow, it was so short the race is already over. Next is the Flower Cup. Mario Circuit is even more generic than Peach Circuit. There is literally nothing noteworthy about this course whatsoever. It's just grass. Boo Lake sucks. The turns can be really annoying and the holes are everywhere. Why can Mario Kart not give us a good ghost level? And on top of that, the name is a lie. This is no lake. I've eaten piles of sand that were less dry than this. Now, Cheese Land is a fun one. The course is a little twisty, but the aesthetic is really unique, and I love the music. And we end with Bowser Castle 2. Yep, I was afraid of this. It's better than the last one, but still just a bunch of thwomps and lava.
Seriously, why did they feel the need to add so many Bowser Castles in this game? The original already had 3, plus we had a new one in Mario Kart 64. So I can understand adding 1 new Bowser Castle, but this one literally adds 4. Yeah, 4! Really? Why?
Now let's check out the Lightning Cup. Luigi Circuit is like the last 2 circuits, but in the rain, which means it has these puddles that cause you to spin out. Sky Garden is probably the best track in the game. It can be a little tricky, but the design is great, and the music is fantastic. Cheap Cheap Island is another beach level, but the bridges help it stand out from Shy Guy Beach. And finally, we have Sunset Wilds, a desert with the Shy Guy tents that may or may not be offensive, and the sun actually sets as the race progresses, which is really cool. The Star Cup is the living embodiment of pain. It has pretty much all of the worst courses. Snowland isn't too awful by design. You mostly just have to deal with some mildly annoying ice physics, but for some reason this course shakes the whole dang screen. I have no idea why it does this, but yikes, it can give you a headache. Ribbon Road is the only good course in here, since the present design is really cool, and taking these jumps is fun. But then Yoshi Desert is awful. Not only is it just a generic desert level, which is boring, but the turns are really annoying, and these stupid sand pits swallow you if you even slightly touch them, which is miserable. And Bowser Castle 3 is the worst of the Bowser Castles, since there are a stupid amount of pits and edges to fall off. I hate this cup. And now we have the Special Cup, which isn't much better. Lakeside Park is my least favorite track in the entire game. It looks the same as Riverside Park, only with a volcano that shoots lava rocks and dims the sky, which is kinda neat, but it's all ruined by this little bastard right here. Some sadistic maniac decided it was a good idea to add these ramps that bounce you instantly on this turn that sends you back to an earlier part of the course. If you hit this, it is basically an automatic loss, especially on the final lap. Whoever put this here deserves to step in a puddle every time they wear socks for the rest of their life. Broken Pier is a slightly more tolerable Boo Lake, but it's still not very good. Bowser Castle 4 is the longest of the Bowser Castles, but this part with all the lava pits sucks. And once again, we end with Rainbow Road, and honestly, this might be the worst Rainbow Road in the entire series. The edges have bounce ramps on them, which sends you flying all over the place, and more often than not, you plunge right into a pit, or it makes you miss a speed boost you need to clear a large gap. There are some cool shortcuts you can take, but most of the time, it is not worth it. I know Rainbow Road is supposed to be hard, but this just isn't fun.
Overall, the courses in this game are a mixed bag. Some of them are pretty fun, but others can be miserable with this game's controls.
We have time trials, which are the same as always, and we now have quick play, which lets you race on any track you want without having to do the Grand Prix, which is nice. Now let's check out the multiplayer stuff. It's already more of a hassle than the previous game since you need multiple systems, but you technically only need one copy of the game. Thing is, if you do that, everyone has to play as Yoshi, and you can only select a few courses. So bust out a second copy, hook up the link cable, and let's go. Multiplayer is pretty standard compared to the last game, but still decent. And we have battle mode, which is fine. It's about the same as it was in Super Mario Kart, with 4 battle courses that have no interesting names. 1 is just a battle arena, 2 is lava, 3 is grass with sand, and 4 is an oasis. Not one of the best multiplayer Mario Karts, but still enjoyable. You can have up to 4 players, but you need 4 copies of the game, the 4-player link cable, and 4 GBAs, so no thanks. Alright, let's finally finish 150cc. The Mushroom Cup honestly wasn't that bad. The Flower Cup had some issues in the beginning, but after a while, I nailed it. Lightning Cup somehow beat it on my first try. Star Cup, sweet mother of Christ, I hate this cup so much. These tracks are all miserable, and I never want to play them again. Come on, Special Cup, we are so close. This is absolute hell. I seriously spent over an hour and a half on this one cup. It was one of the most miserable experiences I have ever had in a Mario Kart game. I haven't felt this angry since I played Super Mario Kart. But after throwing myself at the wall over and over and over again, I finally got through this nightmare of a cup.
I wish that were the end, but sadly we have now reached what is both the most impressive and most annoying aspect of Mario Kart Super Circuit. It has 40 total tracks!
Upon beating the Special Cup, you can then unlock every single course from Super Mario Kart and play them in this game. In order to do so, you have to unlock the Special Cup, beat it, and then replay each of the 5 cups while collecting 100 coins across all 4 races. Doing so unlocks the extra cups, which contain the courses from Super Mario Kart. Let's just finish this quickly. The extra Mushroom Cup has Mario Circuit 1, which is the first Mario Kart track ever, so it's passable, Donut Plains 1, which is meh, Ghost Valley 1, which is eh, and Bowser Castle 1, which sucks. Extra Flower Cup has Mario Circuit 2, which is actually fun, Choco Island 1, which is okay, Ghost Valley 2, which isn't very good, and Donut Plains 2, which stinks. Extra Lightning Cup is Bowser Castle 2, which honestly might be the worst track in all of Mario Kart, Mario Circuit 3, which is whatever, Koopa Beach 1, which is fine, and Choco Island 2, which kinda blows. Extra Star Cup has Vanilla Lake 1, which is awful, Bowser Castle 3, which has its moments, but it's overall frustrating, Mario Circuit 4, which is whatever, and Donut Plains 3, which stinks. Finally, the Extra Special Cup has Koopa Beach 2, which is bad, Ghost Valley 2, which sucks, Vanilla Lake 2, which is horrible, and Rainbow Road, which is good. These tracks are almost exactly the same as they were in the original game, but slightly easier since the controls are a bit better and the CPU doesn't cheat as much. I mean, look at this. They even have 5 laps like in the original instead of 3. Here's the thing, when you unlock them, they only unlock for that specific engine class. Much like the Special Cup before it, unlocking the extra cups in 50cc does not carry over to 100 or 150cc. So this means if you want to unlock all of the cups in every mode, you have to play through every single cup 6 freaking times. You know what? No, I'm not doing that. These are considered extra cups, meaning they are optional. I got the alternate title screen for beating all the courses normally, I did the extra cups in 50cc, and that's good enough. You don't get anything else for beating the extra courses in all of the engine classes, so I am done.
Super Circuit isn't very good. While it is an improvement over Super Mario Kart, and it is impressive for being the first handheld game in the series, there is no reason to go back to it. Aside from a few fun tracks, the controls are janky, the Grand Prix ranges from tolerable to miserable, and pretty much every good thing about this game is done better in later Mario Kart games. Don't play this, it's just not worth it. I mean, why would you when literally every future game in the series does what this game does, but better? Okay, that is tempting.